Hi guys, welcome back. Today is August 13th, so we're going to add our next lesson to our table of contents, and we are doing 0.2 area of 2D shapes. All right, and the IXL that we're going to be referencing with our lesson is S.3. Remember that you have exactly a week from the date that your IXL is assigned to have it completed, and your goal is to have an 80% or higher. This is going to be page number 3 in our notebooks. All right, so let's take a look at the notes that we are going over for today. And we're first finding the area of a triangle. So you're going to use your reference sheet that's located in class to find this formula, or some of you already have this memorized, and that formula for area of a triangle is going to be, let's write it down, we'll put it down at the bottom. Just want to make sure everybody can see this properly. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom just briefly because we've got some extra room at the bottom of our notes, and I'm going to write the formula. Area of a triangle is going to equal base times height divided by 2. Now sometimes you're going to see this area formula written as 1/2 base times height, and that represents the exact same thing. So we're going to do a couple of these, but it's really important to understand that B is the base of the triangle and H is the height of the triangle. Okay? All right. Once you've got your formula down, let's go back up to number 1 and let's just identify a couple of things. So notice that our first 4 triangles are all right triangles, and we talked about this in our previous lesson, that a right triangle has a 90-degree angle, and that's what classifies it as a right triangle. So it's real easy to identify the base and the height because your base is going to be one of your legs. It is the bottom portion of your right triangle, and your height will be the other leg. So your base and your height are never going to be the hypotenuse. But funny thing here, we don't know what the height is. So in order to figure out what the height is, we'll call this x, and we're going to have to use that formula that we used yesterday. So remember that we can find any missing side of a right triangle by using Pythagorean theorem. So I've got a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And if you recall from our previous lesson, both of our legs are attached to our right angle. So we could call the height x, we could call that a, so x squared, plus the base 8, we could call that b, so b squared, equals, and the hypotenuse c, which is 9 squared. We're going to use all this information along with our calculator to help us solve this problem pretty efficiently. So we've got x squared plus, remember, 8 squared. You can do in the calculator, that would give you 64, equals 9 squared. We can do in the calculator, that would give us 81. And when solving for x, you are going to isolate your variable that's being squared. So we have to get rid of this 64. In order to get rid of it, we will need to do the inverse operation, which is subtraction. And we'll subtract 64 from both sides. And that'll leave us with x squared equals whatever 81 minus 64 is, 17. We're almost there. That gives us x squared. But remember, we need this height in order to calculate the area. And so we don't need x squared, we need x. So in order to get x all by itself, we're going to take the square root of both sides, and x is going to be approximately, let's take 17, shift square root. Our directions tell us to round to the nearest tenth, so this is approximately 4.1. Remember that if the number to the right was a 5 or higher, that would tell us to increase this number. But because this number is lower than 5, we're going to leave the 1 as is and not round up. So x is approximately 4.1. So we're going to go over here and label x as 4.1. And now we know we can label our base is 8. Our height is 4.1. And using that formula, the area formula, area equals the base, which is 8, times the height, which is 4.1, all over or divided by 2. And just do this in your calculator. You've got two numbers with an operation in the numerator, so that needs to be done first before you can divide them. You could also put this in a set of parentheses, reminding yourself you need to multiply the base times the height before you can divide it in half. So go back to your calculator, 8 times 4.1, and that gives you, I'm pressing equals to get my 32.8. That's the base times the height. Now we're going to divide that by 2, and that will give us the area of our triangle, which would be 16.4. So your area for number 1 equals 16.4. Go ahead and box in or circle your answer so we know where it is. All right, we have gone over how to solve the area for, this is a good example for 1 through 4. Go ahead and try to do number 4 on your own. Remember that you need the base and the height. In this right triangle, they've only given me the height. So because I only have the height, I will need to calculate what the base is, and we'll use Pythagorean theorem to do that. Once you've found the height, then you can plug your base and your height into your area formula and solve for the area of a triangle. Okay, let's take a look at number 5. So we talked about a problem that looked very similar to number 5 in our previous lesson. This is an isosceles triangle because both two side lengths are exactly the same, which means the height of this triangle is cutting down the middle, and this height is what we need to find. Now we know that if we have an isosceles triangle where both sides are the same, and this height cutting down the middle will split our base into 2, so we can then have a right triangle to find our missing side length. So I'm going to take 7.6, and I'm going to split that in 2. I'm going to divide it by 2, and that tells me if I cut just this triangle here in half, this base is only 3.8. So let's draw that new triangle over to the side, and we have 3.8 for the base, x for the height, and 5 for the hypotenuse. We can use Pythagorean theorem to then figure out what is the height, and then we can plug this information into our formula. So again, remember, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And that will give us what the height is. I'm going to take my 3.8 and square it. It gives me 14.44 equals, I'm going to take my 5 and square it. It gives me 25. And then I'm going to solve for x, so I need to subtract 1444 from both sides. So I'm going to take my 25 and subtract 14.44 to tell me that x squared equals 10.56. So we subtracted 14.44 from both sides. X squared equals 10.56. Remember, we need to take the square root of both sides so that we no longer have x raised to the power of 2. When I take the square root of 10.56, remember to press your shift button and then where your radical or square root is, rounding to the nearest tenth, this would be 3.2 because the number to the right of it is not 5 or higher. So this is simply 3.2. X is approximately 3.2. Now we used this portion of our triangle in order to figure out what the height was. Now the question asks us to find the area of the entire triangle. So if I'm finding the area of the entire triangle, now that I have the height, I can take the original base, multiply it times the height, and then divide that amount by 2. Let's write our formula down again. Area equals base times height divided by 2. And if we're being very specific here, my base is 7.6. My height, we found the height. My height is going to be 3.2. And if I'm going to fill out my formula, area equals 7.6 times 3.2, all divided by 2. So let's use our calculators. Let the calculator do the manipulations for you. So you're just trying to figure out the processes and make sure you're doing them correctly. So I'm going to first put in my calculator everything in my numerator. 7.6 times 3.2. Get your answer. That's 24.32. And then divide that value by 2. It gives us 12.16. So the area will equal 12.16. And that's the area of this entire triangle. Okay? All right, I'm going to ask you, this one's going to be a little bit easier. Well, there's some other steps in here, but you already have your height. I'm going to ask you to see if you can calculate number 8. Try to do that one on your own. Now, 8 only represents this part of the base. You are going to need to figure out what this part of the base is in order that you can have the entire base when you're calculating your area. So find x first, add that to 8, that will give you your whole base, and then you can plug in your base and your height into your triangle area formula. All right, let's move on to the right side of our notes for today. Now we're going to find area of squares, rectangles, and parallelograms. You're going to like this one because it's a lot simpler. The area of a square, a rectangle, or a parallelogram, again, can be found on your reference sheet but is all the same formula. Area equals base times height. So remember, with a triangle, we divide it by 2 because a triangle is half of a square, rectangle, or parallelogram. But when we're dealing with the whole thing, there's no need to divide it by 2. So let's take a look at number 1. All right, so number 1, we have a parallelogram. It's not a square or a rectangle, but it does have opposite sides are parallel and congruent, meaning they're the same length. So we're going to take the base. Your base here is 7.7. So your base is 7.7, and it's meters. They give us a unit here. And your height is 2 meters. All right, this is very easy. Your area will equal base times height. So you're just plugging this in the calculator. Area equals 7.7 times 2. Remember, use your calculator to avoid calculation errors. So we've got 7.7 times 2. And that gives us an area of 15.4. Your area equals 15.4. And I want you to recall, the units are meters. When you're timesing meters by meters, that's going to leave your area with meters squared. This is true for any area problem. Any area problem will always result, let's put this as a side note so that you have access to it. Your area will always result in units, so whatever they are. Let's say it's feet, miles, meters, centimeters, millimeters. Whatever your unit is always going to be units squared for your answer. Any area problem, if they're asking you for the area, will result in an answer that is units squared. All right, number 2, we have a square. Notice I know this is a square because my base and my height are exactly the same. Your base is 1 inch. Your height is 1 inch. Your area is base times height. So your area is 1 times 1. But remember, even though your answer to your area problem is 1, you multiplied inches times inches, so you have inches squared. All right, I feel good about those. Let's have you practice with number 5 and number 8. Remember, with any parallelogram, it's your base times your height. So just a quick reminder, your base is at the bottom, it's the bottom side of your parallelogram, and your height is from the bottom to the top, whatever the perpendicular distance is. So whatever distance that creates that 90-degree angle. It's not going to be your slant height. It will be your vertical perpendicular distance. That will be your height. So that should help you out with number 5 and number 8. Okay, let's go to the back. All right, we have a new shape here, and this is our area of a trapezoid. Again, this formula can be found on your reference sheet, but I'm going to put it on here so you have reference to look back on. For area of a trapezoid, your formula is going to be area equals, and that formula is going to be base 1. Let's write this a little bit neater. Hold on one second. All right, I'm going to reword the way I have you do this. Your area is going to equal your height times base 1 plus base 2 all over 2. So what this really means is that you're taking the bottom or the top base, adding it to the top or the bottom base, whichever one you didn't do originally, adding those two together. So the top and bottom, the parallel sides of your trapezoid, multiplying that by the height, and then whatever value you get, you're dividing by 2. Okay, here is a diagram of a trapezoid for reference. Either one of these could be base 1 or base 2. You can interchange these. Sometimes your reference materials will say the top is base 1 and the bottom is base 2. Sometimes it'll say it the other way around, where the bottom is base 1 and the top is base 2. As long as you're adding the two bases, the parallel sides together, and then multiplying it by whatever the vertical or perpendicular height is. This is your height. And then taking that value and dividing the whole quantity by 2, that will give you the area of your trapezoid. Okay? All right, so let's look at number 1. Base 1. Let's go with the figure that we've just drawn. Base 1 would be 1.5 inches. Base 2 would be 3.3 inches. Your height would be 2.9 inches. And then we're going to take all of this after we've added our two bases, multiplied the height, then we will divide that answer by 2. So let's try it now. My area equals my height, which is 2.9, times base 1 plus base 2 all over 2, because we're dividing that value in half. You have to recall order of operations. So we're going to do the addition that's in the parentheses first. 1.5 plus 3.3. Press equals on your calculator. That gives us 4.8. Now because we're showing our processes, we're going to rewrite this out again. Area equals 2.9 times 4.8 all over 2. I'm going to take my 4.8 and times it by 2.9, and that will give me 13.92. Again, showing your processes. Area equals 13.92 divided by 2. Oh, let's show you. There you go. All right, so I still got 13.92 in my calculator. Take that value, divide it by 2, and our answer, or our area, is 6.96. Area equals 6.96. Just like what we said with our parallelograms, our rectangles, our squares, and our triangles, when you are calculating area, your area will always be units squared. My units were inches, so my area is 6.96 inches squared. Okay? All right. I am going to ask you to do I want you to be able to see it, number 5. Remember, your trapezoid here looks like it's flipped upside down. Your two bases are whatever the top and bottom or whatever the parallel sides are. This 2.9 is parallel with this 1.3. These are my two bases. My height is the vertical or perpendicular length to one of my base or to both my bases. So that should give you the information you need in order to calculate the area of this trapezoid. So go ahead and try this one on your own. All right, last section, we are doing circumference and area of circles. Again, this is another formula or formulas that you can find on your reference sheet. Circumference is like the perimeter of your circle. In order to find circumference, you're going to use the formula 2 times pi times r. Or sometimes you're given your diameter, which your circumference formula would just be circumference equals pi times your diameter. It just depends if you're given your diameter or your radius. I want you to recall that with a circle, from the center of your circle out, so half the distance across your circle is called your radius. If you have the full distance across your circle, so here's the center, and you have the length all the way across, that is called your diameter. So when we're doing circumference, we need to make sure that we know if we're given the radius or the diameter. All right, so that's your circumference formula. Let's look at your area formula. Your area is still going to include your radius, but our area formula is going to be area equals still multiplying pi times r squared. Let's write that a little bit more so you can see it. I'm going to rewrite this down here so that you can see it without the words underneath it. Area equals pi times the radius squared, which means if you recall from order of operations, we're going to have to figure out what the radius is and square it and then multiply it by pi. All right, so number one, it's asking find the area of each. Use your calculator's value of pi and round your answer to the nearest tenth. So the area formula is going to be pi r squared. Well, I know I've got pi times, my radius is halfway across my circle, so this is my radius, 12 squared. So I'm going to have to do my exponents first. 12 squared, if we do this in our calculator, 12 squared is going to give me 144. So showing all of my steps, my area equals 144 pi. Now this is a way, if the question asked you for your exact answer, including pi would be the exact answer. We would just need to include your units showing inches squared because this is an area problem. But our instruction said, go ahead and multiply out the pi using your value of pi in the calculator. So I've got 144 in my calculator. I'm going to hit my multiplication button, so I'm going to hit times, and then my pi button, which is down here right above EXP. You don't have to press anything else, just press the EXP. That's going to give you your pi value in your calculator, and then press equals. I'm going to do that one more time so everybody can see. We've got 144 in our calculator. I'm pressing times, I'm hitting the pi button, and I'm pressing equals. Rounding this to the nearest tenth, remember, one place to the right of your decimal is your tenths place. Look to the right of that number. If this number is a 5 or higher, then the 3 has to go up. If it's less than a 5, the 3 would stay the same. So in this case, it's higher. So our answer is 452.4. Our area equals 452.4 inches squared. Let's do one more. We're going to look at number 3. Number 3, our radius is 9 meters. So my area equals pi times my radius, which is 9, squared. Now, I know 9 squared is 81, or I could put it in my calculator. But leaving this in terms of pi, my answer would be 81 pi. And then recall the area, your units are squared, so this would be meters squared. But the question asks me to leave this, go ahead and multiply that pi out. So I'm going to clear out my screen. I've got 81 times pi equals, and remember you're rounding this to the nearest 10. So I'm going to look to the right of my tenths place, and this 6 tells me I need to bring my 4 up to a 5. So we've got 254.5. 254.5 meters squared. Okay? We're going to do one where the radius is given to you. I'm going to ask you to do number 7 on your own. Let's look at number 9 and 10. These are the last two problems for today. We have find the circumference of each circle. Remember, circumference equals 2 pi r, or circumference equals pi d. So we're going to be taking our radius. If you're looking at your problem, both of these only include the radius. So my radius, let's look at number 9. My radius is 8 miles. Remember, circumference is the distance. It's like your perimeter of your circle. Okay? I didn't do a very good job of outlining it, but that's basically what you're finding out. So I'm going to say my circumference is equal to 2 times pi times, and my radius is 8 miles. Now, if you're asked to leave this answer in the terms of pi, then you're just going to multiply your 2 and your 8 and leave the pi there. This would be 16 pi. That would be an exact answer, meaning that is the most accurate you can get. Circumference is not going to be squared because it's just asking for the distance around. You haven't multiplied miles to anything else. So your circumference would be 16 pi miles. But this one said use the calculator's value of pi. So we're going to do that. Our circumference equals, you've got 16 in your calculator. Oh, here you go. You've got 16 in your calculator times, press your pi button, equals, and again we're rounding this to the nearest tenth. So I'm looking at the 2, and directly to the right of it is a number that's 5 or higher, so it tells me the 2 needs to go up to a 3. So my circumference is 50.3 miles. Not squared because this is not area, just miles. All right, I want you to go ahead and try number 10 on your own. Don't forget, you need to complete S.3 for your IXL. S.3 needs to be completed within a week from the date that this was assigned. So make sure that you're keeping up with that and checking. You want an 80% or higher on each of your IXLs. All right, have a great day.